Hey, teenagers and old codgers, get ready to hear some punk legends and wild stories on the RockStop with Chris Contra. Hello?
Hey, Rozz.
Chris Contra with the RockStop. Yeah.
Indeed it is.
And you know what? Somebody was telling me they tuned into your thing. Because I put a little plug for it on my Facebook, and somebody said, "Oh, his thing is really good."
That's cool. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm glad they enjoyed it.
With the social media, you got to like divvy up your time, and with even with email, I don't check my email every day or whatever, and I missed out on having one of my songs used in a cop show in London. Like, we're not going to hold this for you. You got to let us know by, Monday, April something.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, April 1915. Oh, fuck, I like missed it by not just like an hour or a day. I missed it by years.
Oh, man, that sucks.
Yeah. But it's like it's really cool when you those few people that do come up. They say, "Man, I was going through a really hard time, and that music I could just totally relate to it."
Yeah, absolutely.
Now I put it on whenever I have to do my. As one guy says, I put it on when I have to do my bullshit work around the house, and I'm angry. I put on a negative trend, or I put on Theater Sheep, or if I'm in like a mellow Sunday afternoon mood where I want to be all over the map. And I'm going to be in and out of the house, I'll put on Lover, Legend, Liar real loud.
Yeah.
Because it is all over the map. It's just every different kind of music.
That's what makes it all worthwhile.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to actually go back a little bit with you, with your negative trend days.
Good. That's good, because I'm thinking about those a lot. Now, like a lot of parents tell their kids, don't get into football. I mean, at some point I would tell my kids, don't get into punk rock, because we were like kind of the most hardcore band, but we were on the edge of that. Okay, it's like kind of the punks were kind of spoon-fed. Whatever went on over in England, they started doing that. And the whole gobbing thing, are you familiar with that? The gobbing and the pogo?
Oh, yeah, the punk rock dances.
That was the first two things. It was basically you grab your partner, the girl or whoever you're with, and you choke them while jumping up and down.
Right.
Yeah, and so, everybody, immediately starts imitating. But at our shows, they're getting more and more violent.
Yeah. And
everybody's thinking, we're the most hardcore band. So they're taking the gobbing thing, which may work in England when you're on a high 3-foot stage, but on the Mabuhay stage, it's only 1.5 feet high. I don't like people coming up and spitting on me.
Right, yeah.
So we developed this kind of openly hostile attitude towards our audience. We're going to fuck you up before you fuck us up.
Right.
Because we were attracting a lot of troubled loners and a lot of violent people. And we were kind of like developing like what would become the skinheads, over in England.
Mm-hmm.
But here it was violent young loners and remnants from, and that's who got into our ear, is these older people who are paying attention to us, telling us we're all cool and everything. And they were like people who were kind of failed from the SLA and the Weather Underground. They were real terrorist people, though. And they're talking us into doing more and more crazy shit, you know. It's one thing to break a bank window or, but anyway, we did a lot of stupid things. And the main thing, though, as I was thinking, is we were just so thinking you're indestructible. With me, it wasn't so much indestructible with drugs, because I never got, most people after, discovering speed and staying up for weeks and weeks on end, by 1979, a lot of the original punks were starting to get into heroin, and that's when it started turning dark.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I started like going, I'm going to go back to Portland and do a band there. I really thought that was like a dark vibe. Everybody running around jacked up on speed was one thing, but then they all had to come down at some point, and everybody was getting into that, and it was not my trip.
Yeah, I mean, I remember reading in the book we were talking about last time, the Give Me Something Better book, how you talked about if you stayed in that scene with Negative Trend and, things were getting really violent and then, turned into, some bad drug stuff, that you didn't predict really a long life for yourself if you stayed in that scene.
No, not at all. I mean, and, I should have quit I told you about the lighter guy, right?
Refresh my memory.
The Mabuhay was a long club, like a long rectangle, deep. It went deep into the block, and the stage was at the very back. And, oh, good, my son just brought me a Hamm's beer to go with my coffee here. Stage
Nice.
was in the very back. Bruce Conner got some iconic shots of it the night it happened. I don't know if that was a particular night, though. I don't think that was a squirt gun I think that was just water. Anyway, some dude brought in a squirt gun full of gasoline.
Whoa.
And he's spraying me down with gasoline. And then he gets out a big, I didn't know, all of a sudden though, something hit me in the face and my eyes were burning and squinting, but I didn't miss a beat. I was always a trooper. The show must go on. I'd been maced in the face on stage in Portland, Oregon.
Wow.
So I was no use to, I've been electrocuted on stage a couple of times. Went over and grabbed a light tree where someone tucked a 3-pronger into a 2-prong extension cord, and it was sitting in spilled beer, and it had a light tree in it. I went and, grabbed hold of that and got thrown into the drums.
Wow.
So I'm used to those kind of mishaps on stage, and so I didn't miss a beat. I'm just going with it, just thinking, whoa, what is this burning shit, though? And then Will comes over with his bass, and he whacks the guy in the head so hard with the head of his bass that when he pulls it back, there is skin and hair and, I don't know, not brain matter because he didn't crack the guy's skull, but there is skin and hair matter, and the guy's ear is a bloody mess. And about that time, I see the club owner, the famous Dirk Dirksen, and a guy named Rabbit, who was a doorman who showed up in a lot of the books, pictures of him. Anyway, Rabbit and Dirk grabbed the guy right before he tried to light me on fire.
Oh, my God.
They got him. He had his lighter out. They grabbed him, one of them by each foot. They're beating him. First got him out into the middle of the dance floor away from me so he couldn't light because he still got the lighter out of his hands. And then they dragged him the entire length of the club to the front door, which is about a good 45, 50 yards. No, not that far. Maybe I'm exaggerating. The years have been long, and it was a long time ago. Anyway, he got dragged by the feet. Well, his head, his torso, and he was getting kick stomped by about 100 punks.
Wow.
Just kick stomping the hell out of him. Mm-hmm. They got him out front, and he had no more fight left in him. They called an ambulance for him. But there's a motherfucker light. He was trying to light me on stage. I mean, my face would have been permanently changed. My life would have taken,
Yeah.
And I had rare sober moments where I was in a lot of pain and I couldn't find any alcohol or whatever to numb me out, or there wasn't band rehearsal, or I wasn't doing out stuff where girls are paying attention to me. Wow, you're cool, and here, let me put you on the couch and feed you bonbons and give you blowjobs. Mm-hmm. I had a lot of women just seemed to take me in because I just seemed so skinny and like I was just going to die any moment. And, it was funny. One was this 38-year-old woman, and it was my first older woman. She's 20 years older than me, and I'm 18, and she actually has a house, in the city with a bedroom with a bed, not a pile of cardboard behind a couch that I slept on. Because that was kind of my unofficial room as we pulled the couch out from the wall, because I said, I have to have a space that's mine to write my songs and my poems. Because I really thought I was, the next Jim Morrison or Bob Dylan or Iggy Pop, at least. That's what I always got compared to.
Right.
But I forget even where we were talking. I've just been looking at this beer, wanting to take a breath and take a sip of it.
Well, go ahead and go ahead and take a drink, man, because before you go on, I'll get back to this in a minute. But if I got a comment on the previous story about the guy trying to light you on fire. I mean, that's one of the most insane stories I've ever heard in the scene. And when you hear about, like, you know, bands in more recent years, you know, bitching about too many kids stage diving and bumping into their microphone, and they're complaining about that. I mean, to hear the story, the shit that you've gone through, I mean, that guy is some deranged maniac trying to light you on fire. That's unbelievable.
So guess what happens after that, though? This story doesn't end there. The guy's lying out unconscious. You got an audience that is so fucking jacked up on testosterone because they have literally nearly beaten a man to death. So then everybody proceeds to break every chair and every table and throw it in a pile in the middle of the dance floor. And Will had like a American flag on his bass amp or something. He rips that off and throws it on him, and they put the American flag on the top of this pile of chairs and tables that are all broken up and light it on fire.
They could have burned the whole...
You know, they wipe up the fucking lighter fluid from the guy spraying me and everything, throw it on this top of broken tables and chairs, and light it on fire. But, I have to top that. I can't let the audience have the top of the show. I climb up on top of a speaker stack, and I do a stage dive onto a burning American flag on a pile of broken tables and chairs.
Oh, my God.
With a broken arm, I might add.
Yeah.
And I always led first with my left arm because I'm left-handed. And so now I'm back here in Portland. I have a lot of time to reflect. Was it worth it? It's like, yeah, it's worth it. I got a lot of great stories, but I don't know if you know this. I've had 13 hip surgeries.
Yeah, we were talking about that last time, yeah.
13 hip surgeries, and my arm, there's just not much they can do about it, you know. Mm-hmm. It's healed pretty well, you know. I do okay. But now life is what I make it, and you know, I just have to learn to live with a lot of pain or be part of the opioid thing. And it's better to live with a lot of pain because I find my senses are really, like, clear.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of clarity. You know, it's trying to explain it to my doctor. It's like, you know, God, there's no explanation.
No.
And I can't really say it was worth it because, you know, I may have got a lot of street cred.
Yeah.
I have people coming up to me. The people that do come up to me, God, they make me feel like my life has gave them purpose. And
I think
it's humbling.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're one of the guys that, you know, embody true rock and roll, and you just don't see that much anymore. And I mean, you're paying for it, and that's unfortunate, but you know, at that time in your life, you were kind of nuts. I mean, you didn't give a shit, and you just wanted to give a great show. I mean, was that kind of your motivation behind it?
Yeah, that was kind of it. It was like I knew I couldn't sing, and it's now, you know, I can almost carry a tune now. I can write good songs, and I can almost carry, but I knew singing wasn't my strong point. I wasn't good looking, and I was just tall and skinny, and the girls I went down there with, they said, you look like David Bowie. You should be in a band, because they worship David Bowie. They talked like he was like a personal person. There's a poster of him on the wall, and then, you know, they would say things to each other, like when they were making coffee in the morning. Pammy, would you put on some David? They always called him David, not David.
Right.
It was David. like he was there in the room with us. You know, the first image I have of San Francisco when I first got there, I moved in with the strippers,
mm-hmm.
and they were already living with Craig and Will, because Craig was going with Pammy, and Will was going with Debbie Sue on and off. Will was screwing everybody. Will was just the sex machine of the band.
Yeah.
But so 2 of the band members and myself, 3 of the band members lived there with the 3 girls, Jane, Pam, and Debbie Sue. Debbie Sue, who's still alive, but her and me and Craig are the only ones still alive. Will's dead and Jane's dead, you know.
Yeah.
But Jane was crazy. Jane did crazy shit and got involved in just crazy stuff. She called one time from Los Angeles. She went down to go visit the Mask and stuff like that. and she talked about seeing these thigh-high leather, you know, and wanting to wear them to the mask, you know.
Yeah.
They got a hotel room, and she wanted to wear them to the mask that night. And she called back a couple hours later, and she's on the phone with Pam, and she's squealing. Pam is squealing, "No, you didn't. I can't believe it. You didn't, Jane. Tell me you're kidding."
Yeah.
And then we're all like wondering, what the hell? She gets off the phone. Jane robbed a bank to buy
those
$680. She just asked for $700. Well, she wanted money to go out. She asked for $800.
She wanted
$649 for the boots, and $150 to go out.
Oh man!
So she robbed a bank. I can say that now because she's dead.
Yeah. Did they
she also,
she got away with it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, wore him to that club that night, and then headed up to San Francisco. It was just crazy. The original punks were and the Sex Pistols were inspired by the Ramones, the real family tree, the bands that really, really matter from back then. I think that really inspired me and everybody that I know from that era is the Ramones.
Yeah.
The Sex Pistols, of course. But even before them, it was people like Lou Reed, instrumental in freeing up people's mind.
Right.
David Bowie, New York Dolls.
Mm-hmm.
They were showing people there is something besides this mindless disco, but people just didn't know what. They thought, well, they're smashing down some of the walls. Let's just smash down all the rules and just start over.
Yeah.
Just start over with rock and roll.
Exactly.
You play drums, we'll flip a coin over who gets to play guitar and who gets to sing,
Right.
And Will just wanted to play bass because he thought it made him, look studly. But the first, bands, a lot of it was just there was the gatekeeper bands from the disco era and the glam era that were showing, oh wow, there's something different and darker and weirder, and back to also though they were more of a social conscience, not just I love my baby, la la la, let's go out all night, dance dance dance, night night,
Yeah.
The party dance, everything's okay, and everything wasn't okay. And you look back at that time, you watch, something on the History Channel, it wasn't a particularly nice time. And there was people like Ted Bundy roaming the country, and there was no internet, there was no DNA, there was no, so there was a lot of darkness and dark,
the
70s, the end of the 70s, it was that Patty Hearst thing had happened,
mm-hmm.
and then Patty Hearst, so it was there was kind of a melding of, in California anyway, where the next best thing to being a terrorist was to be in a punk rock band. Or it was kind of the same thing or something. I mean, the two kind of got, because there was still all these bombings going on, in the mid-70s, through the mid-70s against the war in Vietnam and for this thing and that thing. And so there was just a lot of creepy people running around, and there was no CODIS, there was no DNA,
Right.
So these troubled loners that were showing up at the show, sometimes they'd end up being cool. Like this one guy that showed up, oh God, because I'd always know this one's going to be a problem or something, because they'd stand right in front of me for the entire show and just stare at me. Just with, adulation, but it's kind of weird. Well, there's one long-haired guy, asked his name after the show, and he said his name was Eric Boucher. I don't know, okay. And then he came back the next weekend when we were playing, and his hair's all cut. He's got safety pins, and his name is Jello Biafra.
Wow.
And he tried out for my job when I quit the band. I didn't know that until I read the Gimme Something Better book. He's a great guy, you know.
Oh, yeah.
I still have had interactions with him over the years. We're always still good. And it wasn't really an uneasy alliance. They really just wanted us to behave, you know.
Yeah.
No spitting on the dance floor and everything. And that was cool because that gobbing thing was more a thing in the news. I mean, when that started happening on our shows, nobody likes getting spit in your face.
Right.
And people, you know, especially when it's like 20 people out there all spitting from different directions. First couple times I just went with it, like, you know, and I thought, you know what, I ain't making any money at this, you know, and I'm not some messiah or something. Why, you know?
Yeah.
You know, so a few well-placed, like, you know, first person that let go with a gob got a microphone to the side of the head, and
Nice.
I know where to make it hurt, you know.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The ears and stuff. And it got so openly hostile at our shows. I mean, we had our fans, which were basically people in the other bands. They were real supporting. The Dills, the Avengers, Crime, Ready Mades, and those people. They were all real supportive because they didn't see us really as competition. We were horrible. We were just the train wreck. We were the original train wreck band. I mean, you came to see us. You knew it was going to end in a train wreck. We never usually got through a set.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
The one I feel bad about was, I don't know if you're familiar with a band called Suicide. They were a pop duo. They were out of New York. They were kind of cool, along the lines of Soft Cell.
Uh-huh.
So we're opening for them, and Craig talks them into using their amplifier, and we hadn't got to use a Marshall or anything for a long time. So Craig, you know, basically turned it up to 11 from the first note of the first song, and we just had oh no, it wasn't. I take it back. It was not. We opened for those guys, Suicide. That was a different night. His name was Nick Gilder. Had a song called Hot Child in the City, do, running wild and looking pretty. Well, for some dumb reason, they booked him in the Mabuhay because no other club was available. And by then, it was already an established punk hangout. It was him. That was the guy. So we talked him into using his amplifiers. Can we use your bass amp too? That way we won't have to move anything, and we'll just play a quick set. And he had just, you know, his song, that song was just getting radio airplay and big hit.
Uh-huh.
So they were real accommodating because they didn't want to move their stuff, and, you know, they're on their way to the big time.
Right.
Those guys screwed their amplifiers up. I don't know how we did it, but we're like all just, you know, that was a smashing guitars, and Will's going to need a new bass after this one night.
Yeah.
Crazy night. We blew up their amplifiers, and they're just practically in tears. And they're like, well, where can we get an amp? And then the stuntman's going, well, we could go direct with the guitar. I guess we could go direct with the guitar. And we left there. We knew we weren't going to get paid.
No.
You know?
Yeah, right.
And which reminds me. So after all these crazy incidents and stuff, I'm doing a gig with the Avengers and the Nuns, and that's another guy that's been really sweet to me. And he's on the top, and he's been really sweet to me all the way. When he plays Portland, he gives me a private audience with him afterwards, and it's Alejandro Escovedo from the Nuns.
Uh-huh.
He's sold millions of records now, you know, doing his own thing. He just plays rock and roll, you know. It's kind of like Bruce Springsteen or Tom Petty or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, Nuns and Avengers, you know, we were a band that our fans were primarily the other people in bands because they were like, you know, they just liked watching us because it was like watching and knowing what mistakes not to make or something. Or just, you know, to root for the underdog. I don't know. But It was mainly like people from other bands, troubled loners, aging hippie kind of ex-wannabe terrorists, and then, you know, tourists. But there was still that element of jocks from out in the suburbs, even in a city like San Francisco, that would come down with like, we got $100, we're going to get drunk, we're going to start fights.
Yeah.
And, beat up punks or beat up fags or...
Yeah, just there to cause trouble. Just to cause trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think the guy that tried to light me on fire was one of those.
That guy just sounded like a deranged maniac to me.
He sounds like a deranged maniac, and I may have ran into him. I ran into somebody who was there. Get this. I'm up at Bumbershoot in Seattle with my wife of a year. That would have been right before Kurt died or right after. This is back in the 90s. I'm up in Seattle for a show I was doing at the Fun House there. And I go by, and there's the most filthy, lice-covered, smells like urine, barely recognizable as just humanity, kind of person you feel sorry for, but There they are, sitting at a bus stop, and he's rocking back and forth. He's totally mental and crazy. And he looks up at me, and he's got this glare of recognition. He goes, "Negative Trend, Tuesday night. Rozz, Negative Trend, Tuesday night. Mabuhay Gardens, San Francisco, California. Yeah, the guy tried to light you on fire. Yeah, there was a guy trying to light you on fire." And this guy quoted chapter and verse about stuff he knew about Negative Trend. He knew all his shit about me, and I'm going, "Do I know you?" He's going, "Negative." He never really responded to me. He's just a crazily old homeless dude on the streets of Seattle.
Wow.
Who had obviously been to some Negative Trend shows.
Yeah, sounds like. So
Rodeo Punk, and he named his names of shows, Rodeo Punk Roundup and stuff, and I'm looking at him trying to imagine under all the hair and all the dirt and all the urine and lice-infested clothing, but I didn't recognize the guy. I mean, I wasn't big on signing autographs back then, unless it was with a razor blade on some girl's boobs.
Yeah, we talked.
I was into signing terrible stories. Sign with a Sharpie, but I didn't really schmooze a lot. I mean, like I said, it became kind of where we had an openly hostile relationship with the audience, except we try and avoid hitting our friends and stuff.
Right.
And that's sometimes, like I banged into Bruce Luce a couple of times before he was in bands and stuff, and we had a little beef between us, sort of, in the very beginning, but we're fine now. We're all good.
Right, yeah.
But there's, once in a while you get somebody with an elbow accidentally or a forearm shiver, but generally we were trying to just please the people that were out of control. When it's everybody just smashing up the tables and chairs and stuff, that's all good as long as they're not hitting girls and stuff and putting people in the face. But when it was getting openly hostile, it was just kind of weird. Everybody kind of is closing ranks and protecting each other, and then there starts becoming factions out there on the dance floor. And the factions on the dance floor, I think, is what led to the mosh pit,
Yeah, yeah.
People would just take a run at people, I'm going to fuck him up.
Right, yeah. And those mosh pits, or whatever you want to call them back then, were incredibly violent.
Well, yeah, but it wasn't really the punk rockers generally. It was usually...
It was the outsiders. It was the jocks and shit, yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
That's the way it totally is. God, we sold out with the Avengers and the Nuns. That's why I got off on Alejandro, who's a great guy. Just wanted to plug him. But, there was some times when I had to reflect to go like, wow, this is really getting out of control. I mean, when are we going to be famous? When are we going to start getting some money? And so when we did that show, I think it was our first headline gig, but the deck was stacked for us. I think it was our first headline gig, but the Avengers, because Alejandro was our unofficial manager, but I remember going in to get paid, and Dirk says, after he paid some money to the Avengers and he paid some money to the Nuns, I says, well, now it's my turn, Dirk. And everybody else is kind of like shrinking away, and he waves his hand like off, get out, you guys.
Right.
And waves them off. And Dirk says, "You're asking me for money?" And he goes, "Listen, loser." He goes, you know what this is? And he pulls out this file and he goes, this is my Rozz file. This is just for upholstery, furniture, microphones, mic stands, and, 2 personal injury suits pending. And he says, if you're hungry, come by at 6:30. Ness will always feed you. Just go in through the alley. Here's money to get your band home. You need to keep playing here for at least another year before we are even at 0.
Holy shit.
And then he went back into being all nice and said, onward and upward. Great show tonight. Had a personal affinity for me, no matter, regardless of my complete lack of talent, because, you know, when I ended up in a bad scene and got arrested for the first time in my life, alone in San Francisco, and I got mugged, and I tried to chase the mugger because I was drunk and loaded.
Yeah.
And, you know, they prey on people. It was a guy getting me as I got off the bus coming back from the Maruhe to Polk Street. It wasn't a night of a show. And I was loaded on Quaaludes, and he made me sell you 20 for $40. And I was like, I got that. Yeah, just come up into my, by then I had a tenement room at the Oz Hotel. We all had adjoining rooms in this one Oz Hotel. But anyway, this dude followed me up, and as I do the key into my door, he clocked me on the back of the head, and he had my money and grabbed some stuff out of my apartment. And I'm groggy, but fucked up, and I chased him, and I chased him back down these back fire escapes through all this overgrowth behind in the middle. You know, they build apartment buildings all around the city blocks in San Francisco, but in the middle there's this little tiny area of like overgrowth. Fence got in there. I jumped in there, and all of a sudden a bunch of people from the other building came out. They're actually like Chinese or Japanese bodybuilder dudes. And they came and surrounded me with these like long bamboo sticks. I'm not kidding you. This is on Larkin, right there, a couple blocks off Polk Street, about Bush and Larkin. And next thing I know, I'm being arrested. They said I was like, and they just arrested me because I was fucked up and I was a punk rocker.
Yeah.
And they were cracking down, and they had been having curfew sweeps. But Dirk would vouch for me because you can be a performer and be under 21.
So that was a real shitty night for you. I mean, you get mugged.
Yeah, oh God, yeah.
Yeah, mugged and then
I got
arrested.
in jail because it was a Friday night, and I was in there till Monday morning. And I'm calling like, you know, Will's speed dealer to try and get my bail. And he was going to get me released on my own recognizance, only that would have worked, except I didn't know his last name. Oh, you know this guy, but you don't know his last name? So my one phone call was to Penelope. She'd given me her number one time, and that was the only number I could remember.
So you called her?
I called Penelope.
Great.
And I never, ever called her for a date or anything, but I had her number, and I called her from jail because I'd memorized that number. I'd laid awake thinking of that girl. That I was going to be her husband. We were going to be a punk rock couple and have punk rock kids. Punk rock white picket fence.
Yeah.
Yeah, I called her, and she got Dirk, and Dirk got on it. And it was Dirk, you know, basically who got me out of jail and then helped me get the charges dropped. I really didn't do anything illegal, so
right.
There really shouldn't have been any charges.
Yeah.
They booked me on suspicion of possession of heroin because I had 2 capsules in my pocket. But what they were was they took them to their lab and everything. And it's like, come on, you know, when has anybody ever empty out like pill capsules and put heroin in it? Did they do that back in the old days? Do they do that now? Has anyone ever did that? But anyway, so they ran a lab test on it. It was tetracycline, which is what they gave all of us kids for acne. And every kid I knew had a prescription of 100 tetracycline.
Yeah.
You know, because we all had raging acne, you know. But then that was the other thing about punk rock. Acme was kind of cool. And for me, that was just, wow, I dig this stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, right.
I can go with this.
Exactly. I mean, it's usually not a good thing in any other phase of life, but in punk rock, it works.
It was always like something really neat when somebody would come up with some food stamps or some money, and we'd make a real meal, and everybody would kind of contribute, help, and,
yeah,
you know, it was really kind of a sense of family that I enjoyed that was not like my real family. I mean, most of us, I know me, I came from a dad that was beating on me, you know.
Mm-hmm.
He had a bad day at work, or there was always some reason to be mad at me, and he was like beating on me, and I fucking couldn't move out of the house soon enough.
Right.
I mean, I was out by the time I was 14. He was gone anyway.
So
but I reconciled with him when I got a record on the charts for 1 week, and I reconciled with him because I just thought maybe once I'll just fucking give him a beat down now that he's an old man. But no, I saw him. I didn't feel that way at all. I felt like showing him my new baby and showing him my record. And
time changes things. Time heals wounds. And
and you know what? A lot of the shit my dad said was right. You know, and I just like, why did I fight him so much on that? And it's like, my son fights me on shit. And then a year or so later, I'll hear him kind of coming around.
Right.
To things I say.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
And I'm like, you know, yeah, it is good.
Yeah.
You learn and you grow. I just moved some of my memorabilia down here to the shop. I have this letter from some girl from a mental ward. And it's like, it starts out, "Hello, Rozz. It is I, Michelle of the mental ward. Nothing makes sense to me in this world but your music. Music is faster than beauty." And then she just goes on with this big, long, crazy diatribe, but keep rocking, Rozz, because she called me the king of noise. But one of the things she says in there is like, and it's echoed, and we've talked about this theme before. And they were saying, "Hey, we're thinking of coming out to San Francisco, and you know, I've always thought of you as a well-respected punk because you never sold out." And it's like, believe me, I would have sold out if I had a chance. We did get an offer from Malcolm McLaren to manage us, you know, after the Sex Pistols were breaking up there in town.
Yeah.
But Will told him, "No rules, no rulers. We're anarchists. We don't need no management."
Oh.
You know, he was looking for a new project. And it's like, I wish we would have taken it because he went on to do Buffalo Gals, Boy George, Madam Butterfly. Everything he touched turned to gold.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, these fan letters, getting back to them, it's like, I keep them because I get so few now. But I have like a trove of them, and it was like, "We were thinking we might come out to San Francisco in the summer, maybe hitch out there. Is it cool if we stay with you? Maybe we could bring some food stamps and like trick you out on food and maybe go to some punk shows." And I'm like, this is 1996, you know. I got this apartment still in San Francisco that I've had since 1984 that I only moved out of just to escape for my son's safety, you know.
Yeah. When
things got just nuts in 1999, I finally left it for good.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, it's like, oh, yeah, just total stranger. Like, yeah, come on out. Yeah, you can hang out. I really, when I was listening to rock and roll leaders that led us down to punk rock that were cool, that were breaking through and doing something different, I forgot to mention there's also Alice Cooper.
Oh, yeah.
That was the first concert I saw was Climax Blues Band, Steve Miller Band, and opening the show, Alice Cooper.
Wow.
At the Dalles Grange Hall, a place that seats maybe 1,000 people. And there was a bunch of fucking farmers there. And Alice Cooper got booed. And my brother and I were supposed to be at a Boy Scout camp out, but instead my older brother took me. We went down to the bus station. We got on a trailways, and rode out to the Dalles and went to the show at the Grange Hall instead of going on the Boy Scout campout. And it was my first rock concert. And Alice Cooper didn't have many gimmicks back then besides the makeup and the snake.
Yeah.
And like the dead baby heads, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But man, what a cool fucking show to be your first show. Climax Blues Band, Steve Miller, he can write some, you know, good jingles.
Alice Cooper was definitely the most memorable performance that night.
Yeah, you know, there was those people, Alice Cooper and Iggy Pop. I got to mention Iggy Pop. Iggy Pop, Alice Cooper, Lou Reed, David Bowie, and to a small extent, punk rockers, most won't admit it, I'll admit it, we listened to it when nobody was around. We all like Neil Young. Uh-huh. Neil Young has always been really right on. He never, his relevance, he's still relevant today, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't associate him with, you know, we hated hippie music and all that. But, you know, we were just really trying to hold this line because we were bent on it being something new. So there was this real resistance. You know, that's why the punk scene, you know, the initial punk scene was very, very anti-pot.
Yeah.
Pot's for fucking hippies.
Yeah.
You know, but it really, the punks that were pot smokers were the ones that ended up surviving and not getting into hard drugs. The thing about punk rock and its attachment with the kind of terrorist and destruction thing and anarchy and all that, I mean, it was about destruction of property and government property and corporate property. It wasn't about hurting people or killing people.
Right.
Or, you know,
yeah.
Never. And, you know, when I got involved with this one thing and I saw how big the explosion was, and I thought, you know, if there was anybody near that explosion, I could have killed people. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And I felt like I'm 19 and I'm washed up. I quit my band. I sold... Craig thought it was his guitar because he played it for so damn long. No, it was my Flying V guitar that was in Negative Trend. I sold it for $825, and it recently, I saw it on the Antiques Roadshow, it sold for $25,000.
Oh.
Not even a Gibson Flying V, mind you, an Ibanez Flying V.
How did it sell for that much?
They had the provenance going back to a guy who it turned out, I found out from his sister, who's a firefighter, that he sold it to the guy who sold it to the guy who sold it to some pawn shop, to the pawn shop who sold it to a collector who put it on Antiques Roadshow. But it was the guitar. It was the guitar. They didn't talk about it on Antiques Roadshow, but,
yeah,
you know, I heard about it from Donna Loeffler. And I thought I was getting such a killing because I only paid $325 for that guitar new. But who would think a guitar from the 70s would be such an antique now? Getting your basic roof over your head definitely was. I mean, the housing market is so nuts now that I think it really does limit creativity, because one of the things that being in poverty does is it forces you to be creative with what you eat, creative with how you live, creative with how you manage costs.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
You know, because you're going to have to pay for something somewhere along the line. Everybody pays in this life some way, or you just kind of get drummed out. Like I told you in one of our earlier interviews, people got sick of Sid Vicious, and it was like, get him out of town. And I think it was Lamar drove him down to L.A. Yeah, let those guys fawn over him.
Uh-huh.
Get him out of here. We're tired of this guy. You know?
Yeah.
He's depleting our resources. He's depleting all our girlfriends' money. He's depleting all the cute chicks.
Yeah.
He's really nothing, you know, he had no political point of view, there was nothing about him that was, and it's funny, I've started fights and I've started friendships that way many times with people, you know, I saw a girl one time wearing a Sid Vicious t-shirt, and I said, God, if you ever met that guy, you would feel creepy crawly with that shirt next to your skin. And then she ended up becoming a really good friend. She would ride her bicycle over, you know, to look at my punk rock memorabilia and hear records and stories and stuff.
Yeah, that's cool.
And we're still in touch. She's about 25.
Yeah.
And but I'm comfortable in my own skin.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with what I've done. I'm comfortable that I didn't really hurt anybody along the way, because, you know, people that come at me say, you know, you really touched my life in a good way. They never say, like, man, you know.
Yeah.
Well, there's one girl that got into therapy and told me, her therapist told me that she would never ever be any, you know, till she cut me out of her life completely. So I said, well, why don't you cut me out of your life completely? So
yeah,
she's trying that. I haven't heard from her in all years. It must be working.
Taking her therapist's advice, yeah.
Yeah, and besides, we'd brought back this huge noggin girl with huge bazoombas that was totally crazy and a total shoplifter, but she was a great asset to have. She's totally crazy, big boobs, would just decide which guy in the band she was going to screw that day, and she had no boyfriend. We called her the Ape. Her name was April, but we called her the Ape. She was like the original, like she was like fucking Tank Girl. I saw this movie, Tank Girl, and I go, yeah, that's Ape.
Yeah.
I made a movie about Ape. That was what was cool about these punk women too, and these punk girls, is they wrote their own rules. Talk about empowered. Mm-hmm. No, you're not going to be my boyfriend. I'm not just going to see you. You know, it's like, God, baby, I love your boobs. Yeah, everybody loves my tits. You think I don't know that? I mean, she was like 18 years old, and, you know.
Yeah.
She's just like, whoa, she knows where she's at.
We were talking a little bit last time about Sid Vicious, and I just want to, get your take on him a little bit, because there's the perception of this guy, the legend of Sid Vicious versus who he truly was. And you had some encounters with him, right? I thought maybe.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
And it's just like, well, I think, where some of this idolation after his death and everything, in the case of Kurt Cobain, is kind of warranted. All this idolization and people wanting to be like, or, wearing these shirts with Sid Vicious on them. Mm-hmm. He really, it is really undeserved, unless you just want to idolize, someone who is just, is just a jerk.
Yeah.
If a girl left her purse open by him, he would steal the money out of it.
Wow.
Even, if he was even like, as he's at the top of their game, when they're big rock stars, he would, he'd steal money out of any girl's purse. I mean, he went to parties and just laid around. He's wearing these leather pants that were just soaked with urine. He smelled so badly like urine.
Yeah.
He'd obviously gotten so drunk and fucked up that he'd urinated himself.
Wow.
And, he just wasn't that funny. I was not like Will was like, the true like punk blueprint, as I used to call him, the blueprint,
Yeah.
He was what Sid should have been like, but Sid wasn't. Sid was not involved in politics. Sid didn't have a strong stance, and he's just a guy that liked to get as fucked up as possible all the time. And I know I sound kind of hypocritical, because I was pretty fucked up back then a lot of the time too, on booze, and so was Ricky from the Sleepers and other people, booze and pills and stuff.
Yeah.
But it was like seeing Sid Vicious, it was kind of like, wow, this guy's kind of a dork.
Yeah.
To this guy, and we wear shirts with this guy's picture on him. I mean, that more than anything was one of the things that really I found disillusioning
Right.
Towards the, you know, in the punk scene was how Sid Vicious was all idolized. And he just basically went from party to party and stayed until, like, the word would start getting around, oh, 2 of the Sex Pistols are at this or that party. The one up in the Haight is the one that people always talk about. And then by the time everybody starts getting there, and, you know, even me, and I was kind of inside the loop, having, you know, tried to do the show with them at Winterland there.
Yeah, that was their last show, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I hardly remember that. I just remember it being fun. Just, it's like, you want to play back here? Play.
Right.
And just getting kind of the green light to just riot back there.
Mm-hmm.
I think Bill Graham wanted to get it over and get everybody out of there at that point, because he turned up the house lights when we were supposed to go on, had, you know, these bikers like pushing people away. And it was kind of weird. It was like, I remember these guys totally picking me up and pushing me to this fire exit door and shoving me outside. And then another door, this is on the back side of the building, about 20 feet away, some guy opening the door and saying, come on in here. And he let me right back in. But the deal that happened while I was out, that little short time, is they got rid of our equipment.
So that was all gone. You guys couldn't even play.
So, yeah, well, they said, you can play. Go ahead.
With no equipment.
And no equipment, and the house lights are on, and we had our run of the backstage, so there was just this line of, like, I don't know, 50 or 60 garbage cans full of little 6-ounce Olympia beers. Little tiny cans. That's what they had backstage.
Yeah.
For booze. And I just started tipping over every friggin' garbage can. I mean, there was, like, water about an inch deep. It was cool, though, because, like, ABC, NBC, and CBS were there. And that was all there was back then. There wasn't even Fox. The 3 major networks. And the 3 major networks all had a representative there on the evening news in what has been termed punk rock. The punk rock band, the Sex Pistols, played their last gig in the United States tonight. You know, that's like Dan Rather breathing. You know, it was really funny because it was like it was a national thing. And then, of course, all the Hollywood stars went up to be there, and I think a lot of them found Sid repugnant too. I mean, he was just a repugnant person. I you know, if you want to idolize someone, idolize Iggy Pop, you know, or somebody that is really worthy and has, like, survived and whatever. Anybody in San Francisco thought he wasn't going to OD on dope.
Right. And it's funny because
a month or two.
These days, you know, there's so many, like, documentaries and things still on this guy. Like, he is still worshipped by all these people for some reason. And even, like, the whole thing with Nancy. I mean, did you know Nancy at all?
What's weird is one of my first internet stalkers was Nancy's sister.
Oh, wow.
And she has gotten in touch with me a couple of times and, like, all this stuff wanting to talk to me about. And I really don't know nothing about, you know, Nancy. I really didn't. I never met the woman.
Right.
But her sister got a hold of me for some reason back in, like, it would have been when I was on MySpace. Somebody said, hey, you got to get on this MySpace. I swear, this whole social networking, for me, it's been like, I mean, I sell enough downloads that I get a $20 royalty check, at least one a month, sometimes two, you know.
Yeah.
They're only about $20, but that means all my music you can steal right off the internet pretty much. I only get 3 cents a download. 6,000 people do the right thing and pay for music.
Yeah.
You know, and so it really renews my faith in the human race.
Definitely, yeah.
But it's always the song they're downloading is I had a song that was re-recorded by a band called the Dandy Warhols. I had a song called Valium.
Yeah.
And they did a version of it that's completely different than mine. mine's like kind of happy,
yeah,
goofy, and theirs is just like this. You wouldn't even know it's the same song. I mean, you really can't even tell. But anyway, people see my name on their record and they get interested, and so they go and download the original of Valium.
Right.
And then the rest of it is those songs I wrote, my kind of first side project from Negative Trend, the 11 songs in 19 minutes. It's been marketed as Rozz and Negative Trend, the pop sessions. You know, that's the whole thing that's been great about this social media. I mean, at least for me, since a friend of mine said, you got to have a MySpace. This thing was designed for you. I mean, you really got to have a MySpace.
Yeah.
I've had nothing. Everyone says, oh, you know, bad luck. You might meet freaks. You know, yeah. And it's like, I never had one bad experience. I met all these, like, just cool people and, like, beautiful women. But I have to always tell them, you know, hey, those pictures of me, that's not what it looked like. Those were taken 30 years ago. You know that, don't you? You know, try and get them ready for the gruesome truth. But because of the internet, there was no internet back then. I wish there was, you know, because I wish there was more pictures and stuff of me, because it was really something.